Bombay, now called Mumbai, has two faces. A place we tend to look at as divided between us and them. A pakka world versus a kacha world. It's one city, two worlds. Both generate a huge energy. This is the city's reality. It may be its greatest strength.
This century, the world is going to become increasingly urban, with an incredible overlap between the urban and rural, where many worlds will coexist in the same space. In fact, in Bombay, you already see these varied worlds coexisting. The static or pakka city, built in permanent materials, ordered and monumental in its presence, and the kinetic or kacha city, built in temporary materials, chaotic, bazaar-like in its form, but vital and pulsating with energy. These are two completely different worlds that exist in the same space.
This is the richest city in India, the nerve center of its finance, commerce, and industry. It's also one of the most densely populated cities in the world, an average density of 50,000 people per square kilometer, a density much greater than that of New York. A population that at almost 15 million people is fast approaching the entire population of Australia, one of the most explosive rates of growth experienced by a city. So what's different about Bombay?
Nestled here in the contemporary city is an incredible temple tank, a completely different world. Actually, every city has these different worlds, but they exist in different spaces. Bombay's uniqueness is that these worlds exist in the same space. The kinetic and static city overlap, compressed together.
In our minds, we create an illusion of a postcard perfect city, ordered and controlled, a Victorian emblem. But was there ever such a city? In fact, the bazaar, the kiosk, always existed on the outskirts of the colonial city. The city was founded by men who came together for trade and profit. On an island just below the Tropic of Cancer, that was an almost accidental dowry gift on the marriage of Charles II of England to the Portuguese princess Catherine of Braganza. The British started with the area around a safe harbour. Over years, 7 islands were linked. You could say that the city was quite literally manufactured, land reclaimed in direct proportion to commercial needs. The fourth city, as the British planned it, was structured and formal, an intended development which could be called a static, predictable city, easily controlled with a sense of law and order permeating it. Deft social engineering ensured the right mix of communities that gave the city its energy and vitality. These communities maintained their identity and replicated their own familiar house patterns as if they had brought their own towns with them. These neighborhoods developed their own ethnic characteristics, more in the image of a traditional Indian town. Narrow lanes, commerce loosely organized together with residences, and the vibrancy of an Indian bazaar.
Bombay wasn't built by the British, Calcutta was. Bombay was built by Indians, by Parsis, by Gujaratis, by Maharashtrians, by a whole lot of people, Punjabis, Goans, a whole lot of people. But what the British did give us was the municipal structure, which allowed us to relate to each other as the city grew. Now, it worked for a simple reason. In those days, which was, say, the end of the 19th century, India was a very paternalistic society. We had a leader for the Bora community, we had leaders for the Parsi community, and on and on. It was a wonderful golden moment when the structure of our Indian communities found an exact parallel, the same absolutely analog in the European paternalistic model, the Victorian model. And that's how Bombay blossomed. It never really had a master plan, but it had intelligent people who chose a good city engineer.
The density of the Indian town was far removed from the order and calm of the European city that was simultaneously being created. Clearly, these worlds were separated in different spaces as a way for the British to deal with a world they could not really comprehend, the world of the bazaar city. The bazaar is about small negotiations and little moves which are not ordered, that easily find their way into the crevices of the city. This phenomenon quickly transforms the static city into a vast bazaar, thus negating any large-scale planning interventions. There was a time when mills dominated the skyline of Bombay. They were the powerhouses of the city's prosperity. Interestingly, the wealth of the city from the 1880s was built as a result of a civil war in America and the crash of the cotton-producing economy of its southern states. Cotton from India fed the mills of Manchester and the port of Liverpool. The impact on Bombay was immense. The resulting cotton boom made Bombay a hub in the world marketplace. It led to a huge expansion of the city, dock areas and rail links through reclamation of land. The railways carried not only cotton, but also men. The mill workers who came were mostly from the rural hinterland surrounding the city. They were accommodated in barrack-like tenements that were referred to as not housing but warehousing people. Significantly, these chawls, as they came to be known, represented the first attempt to provide a living space and a place of work close together. The mill, the employer, became responsible for housing its workers, what we call entitlement housing. So when this system broke down, what happened? The moment you no longer had entitlement housing, a whole new city grew, finding an alternative for itself. Imperceptibly, the bazaar became the mechanism to accommodate the migrant and cushion his entry into the city. Given the lack of any clear planning vision, even the organized sector has now maneuvered and fashioned itself in the seemingly ad hoc manner of the bazaar.
यहाँ ज़मीन बेच के ऊंचा इमारती अच्छा ऑफिसेस बांध के यहाँ डेवलपमेंट करके यहाँ ज़्यादा मुनाफा करोड़ों रुपए कमाने का एक मिल मजदूरों का मिल मालिकों का एक कल्पना उनके मन में आई। तो बाद में इन लोग ने एक कल्पना के लिए यहाँ मिल बंद करना, मिल सीख करना, धीरे धीरे मजदूरों का पगार बंद करना। 2.5-3 लाख मजदूर जब बम्बई शहर में रहते थे तो ऐसे पैमाने पे अभी एक 35,000 मजदूर खाली है बम्बई शहर में। यहाँ के मालिक लोग, यहाँ के पॉलिटिशियन लोग और यहाँ पे के माफिक लोग ये ने सब मिलके एक रैकेट बनाया और बम्बई शहर को ये पूरा नक्शा उन लोगों ने बदल दिया है.
The change from mercantile to manufacturing, and now from manufacturing to service industries, has affected other cities in the world more gently than it has this one.
You know, there is a scheme which is operative in the city that if any of these mills get permission to sell their land, then the formula is that they surrender 1/3 to the city for open space, for maidans, for hospitals, schools, all the things, the infrastructure that we desperately need. 1/3 is kept for low-income housing, and 1/3 is put on the market. So it's tremendously important, not just for the look of the city, because it gives you all this wonderful open space and maidans, bigger than the Azad Maidan, just where we need them. But it also lets the city get housing where it really needs the housing, along these wonderful arteries which run right through this area, not only roads, but the major trains, the Western Railway and the Central Railway, go right through the heart of this area.
The problems of slums are directly related to the pull of the wealth of the city. The slums are in fact townships in themselves, as if the village has entered the city, challenging it. They weave a web around the structured city and provide most of its resources in the informal labor sector. Without them, the city would probably come to a standstill.
Dharavi is one of the largest slum, not only for Asia, it's also for the world. There are about 100,000 families living here with 85,000 structures. There are one toilet for every 800 person. Therefore, there is a huge problem. Here, all the informal industries, leather industry, stitches, if you name it, all industries are there. These are the industries are self-financed. You know, the Time magazines cover the packages printed here. The more than 100 crore rupees worth of leather is imported from this place. This is the biggest revenue the government of India and Maharashtra gets on as far as leather industry is concerned.
The squalor of the slums is not a reflection of the failure of its inhabitants. It's more the failure of the government, which has failed to implement adequate policies for them. Slums represent more than 50% of the population of the city and a significant part of its economy. Yet, these settlements occupy less than 10% of the total land area of the city.
यहाँ हम लोग को आके 14 साल हो रहा है और जब झोपड़पट्टी जब तोड़ने का टाइम नोटिस भी हम लोग को नहीं दिया कि 20-25 बुलडोजर आके तुड़वाया और भय रही में से हम लोग को मारने का और हमारा घर का सामान जलवाने का लेके जाने का। हम काम पर जाने लगे, हमारा घर के बारे में हम लोग को सोचना पड़ता है कि कब आके इन लोग तोड़ेगा। यही हम लोग को जास्ती हम लोग को टेंशन है।
Isolated from the kinetic city, attempts at development sometimes end up looking like architectural theme parks with different styles mixed into a globalized signature of what we think in Bollywood fashion means the world outside India. Here we house rich, secure, self-contained dreams. Much like the merchants of the fourth city did. And like it was then, the bazaar, the kinetic city, is present just outside the gates. Around 5 million people use the north-south rail link every day. Almost the entire population of Sydney goes in and out of the two railway terminals of South Bombay on a daily basis.
108 went down. Mumbai
It's not unusual for a person to spend 6 to 7 hours in travel time back and forth to a workplace. The real social space then becomes the train.
I spend 4 hours, minimum 4 hours in the train. If the train is late, it will take more time. That is a different thing. And mainly, we don't have time extra, like for any other entertainment. So the main entertainment is in the train. Really, train is the main attachment for us.
हम 30 साल से इधर धंधा कर रहे हैं। इडली है 6 रुपये में बेच रहे, वड़ा 7 रुपये में बेच रहे, और होटल में वही इडली 10 रुपया है और वड़ा 12 रुपया है।
There are approximately 200,000 hawkers in the city, generating an estimated turnover of 60 billion rupees a year and providing employment to 400,000 people. The scale is simply staggering. Are they an imposition, an irritant, illegal, or do they help sustain our lives?
फ्री वाला कहाँ भी, किधर भी, कैसी भी अच्छी, सस्ती, ताज़ी और ये सेवा हम उपलब्ध करा के देते हैं। अगर फ्री वाला नहीं रहेगा तो ये चीज़ें कोई भी बेचेगा नहीं और आम लोगों को जो सेवा सुविधा है वो उसको मिलेगा नहीं।
This is the bazaar city in action. Ignoring it has resulted in the failure of planning policy over the last 4 decades in Bombay and the blurring of the very purpose of the city. Today, Bombay is a multifunctional city, a service city with bits of manufacturing, trade, a faltering port, and our aspirations for global connectivity. The inability to effectively deal with these issues, coupled with a massive shift in the demographic makeup of the city, has resulted in a state of implosion, where the city has densified in the same space rather than diversifying into more dynamic modes. And so, planning or city administration has been reduced to disaster management, just keeping the city going.
You know, the whole thing boils down to the management, or really the mismanagement of our cities. Right now, say this, the key decisions for Chennai are taken not by the people ostensibly in charge of Chennai, but by the Chief Minister and Cabinet of Tamil Nadu, of the state government. And they've been elected from other towns, from other constituencies. They are not accountable to the people of Chennai. And the same happens in Mumbai with the government of Maharashtra. We've got to change that. The key decisions for New York are not taken, New York City, are not taken in Albany by the governor of New York State. They're taken by the mayor of New York. We all know that, and that's true of Paris, of London. It has to be that way. Everyone goes around saying we need dictatorship. On the contrary, we need more democracy. We need more accountability.
The bazaar or kinetic city should not be perceived as merely overburdening the existing infrastructure. It is in fact a huge creative force with immense vigor, a vigor that can drive the city if only it was supported through more investment in basic amenities, a vigor that manifests itself in many ways, and on which the very existence of the static city depends.
You can have a city with beautiful avenues, with wonderful trees, and it can be a terribly boring place. It often is. Bombay is a perfect example of this. Every day, as a physical plant, it gets worse and worse. And yet better and better as city. And I don't mean this is just for the rich people. In fact, on the contrary, I think it's better and better for the squatters coming, for the migrant labor looking for jobs. They get paid better. I think it's better for the little street children who run free on the train. It's better for the teenagers who go to college. It's probably better for writers, for painters, for people who make films. Why? Because this very implosion, which is destroying it as a physical plant, is getting a greater density of experience, which changes qualitatively the life you live. In fact, I think most architects, we talk about the city beautiful, but we all choose to live in the city urbane when we have to choose. The ideal thing would be to live in a great city, which is a great place, like San Francisco or Paris. But I would call Bombay a great city and a terrible place. And if I had to choose, I'd choose the great city and try and improve the terrible place.
In the coming decades, the bazaar city, the kinetic city, will completely transform Bombay as we have known it. If the true value of the bazaar city is recognized for what it is and integrated with the static city, it could add a crucial dimension of energy, vitality, a dimension that will once again reinvent Bombay and propel it into the future. To create a new city is easy, an act of optimism. To renew and sustain an existing one is an act of courage.